I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask. Today we have with us the Michigan Society for Deaf Children of Wayne County. Hurry back and join us. Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask. Today we have with us the Michigan Society for Deaf Children of Wayne County. Our guests is Beverly Purnell and Betty Pye. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Glad to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Now, I didn't give out your titles because I know you both have very, very important titles, and I want you to take the moment out and give our audience your titles.
Well, I'm with the Michigan Society for Deaf Children, Wayne County, and I'm president of that organization, and it's been in existence since August of 1988.
Okay. And Betty?
And I'm president of Deaf and Hard of Hearing Network, and we've been in existence since 1997.
Okay. Now, ladies, let's start off with the Michigan Society of Deaf Children and kind of ease into how these two programs come together. So can you give us some history?
Yes, well, we got started back in 1988, as I mentioned, in August, and the purpose of it was to start advocating for the children, for deaf children and families. And what we do, we go to the schools, we go to the courts, different educational systems, as well as the Social Security office. And our purpose is to work with the children as well as the family to advocate for services that has not been in existence for them before, or to advocate for services that they should be receiving that they're not receiving. I got connected with Betty because she does a lot of the services that we need in order to help enhance our hearing impaired persons.
Okay, but how does one come in contact with your agency? Is it an agency or a program? How does one?
Well, it is an agency.
Okay.
And they can contact us by calling us and or writing us. We're also listed in the
Yellow Pages or something?
well, no, in the telephone books, the telephone directories that come out of Lansing for the special needs people. We're also listed in that.
Okay. Now, when one comes in contact with you, say more like a court system situation, what is an example of a court situation?
Well, for example, we have children that has been removed from their parents because of abuse or neglect and so on. Therefore, when the parents come and the parents are deaf, we're going to use the deaf parents. When we go to the juvenile court system, there needs to be an interpreter there. But when the interpreter is there, the interpreter can never state whether the hearing impaired person is really understanding what's going on. They're like a microphone. Mm-hmm. So they're strictly only giving the information that's being shared. My purpose will be there is to work with the clients to make sure they're getting the correct information. For example, a lot of people ask, well, do you understand? And they'll say yes, but then you ask, what does it mean? I don't know. And what they're saying is, I understand the interpreter clearly, I can repeat exactly what she said, but I'm not really understanding the system. I need a little more clarity. So my purpose is to be there to make sure that that parent and or children receive full service with an understanding.
Okay, so sometimes you run into a situation where the parent is the person who's profoundly deaf and the children are children of hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have a combination of each. We also work with another system where there are deaf parents that are housing some of our children that are deaf who has been abused. Therefore, I'm there for the children also. The children should always know what's going on with themselves. So when visits come about, or when they're going to be brought into special settings, it needs to be an interpreter there, which is true, but there needs to be an advocate to be able to say, wait a minute, I don't believe they're understanding this quite yet. We need to rephrase this. We need to use a different terminology.
Okay. Is it difficult if you have a child in placement, say foster care, and they're of a profoundly deaf nature, to communicate with a profoundly deaf child in a foster care setting, whereas the parent who is in the foster care setting is not of sign language interpretation?
Well, I wouldn't say it can be difficult if that particular agency does not have an interpreter or an advocate, yes it is, because now you're bringing a deaf child into a hearing world and expect them to function. And that's not just totally true. You have to be able to go where the child or the adult is. Therefore, the agencies or the foster care agencies that have a deaf person, be it a child or an adult, should always have an interpreter and or advocate.
Okay. Okay. Well, Betty, I don't want to leave you out. Give us a little bit about your program.
Well, my program, I started basically when my son graduated high school, and I realized that he had no work skills. And he went out to try to get a job and was unable to. So what I've tried to do is to work with the deaf to help educate them better, make them so that they are able to go out in the work and take care of themselves, how to interact with hearing and deaf also. Sometimes they don't have the family development that they should have, and I try to work with them so that they would be able to do that.
Okay. Now let me ask you this: from your own experience, you had to come to this point, whereas your own child was is he hearing impaired or profoundly
My
deaf?
child is deaf.
Okay.
It took a lot for me to realize that, but my son is deaf.
Okay.
And we went through a lot of difficulties getting him the things that he needed. And I just felt that it was too much. They should not have to go through all of that just to go out and work and be able to support and take care of themselves.
Okay. But let me ask you this. I know this is a personal question. What age did you discover that your son was deaf?
When they told me that my son was deaf, I took it as hearing impaired. And that was about 7 years old. When my son actually graduated high school, it's when I really realized that he was not hearing impaired, that he was deaf. Sometimes I think that we don't want to accept, and I didn't accept the fact that he was deaf. I just said, oh, and a lot of people tell me, well, he'll grow out of it, you know. But it took me that long to realize that he was deaf, that he couldn't hear without his hearing aid, and even with the hearing aid. And as he grows older, it becomes worse.
Right. Well, you know, I'm hearing impaired, and they told my mother when I was 5 years old. So, but I remember the doctor telling my mother, don't treat her any different from
Yes.
anyone else.
Yes.
And she didn't. So it was like this, you know, expanded and overwhelming amount of services that you learn, or skills that you learn rather, and everything I did was just like my sisters, just like the rest of the family. But when the time comes that you are on your own, or that you have to
Exactly.
venture out in the job market or go beyond high school, it shows up. So it did show up in the latter part of years more so than it did me being a youth. And I think one of the problems that we have is that society looks at hearing impairment and profoundly deaf as a, quote, older person situation.
Yes, that's
that
right.
when you become elderly, you will lose your hearing. But hearing loss can be at birth.
Yes.
All the way through, and I think that we should, you know, better educate our people, our community, on knowing that it's at any time, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Sometimes I'm out in the open somewhere in the public, and I see people with hearing aids way down in their ear, and this itty bitty little wire that they can pull out. I'm not too fond of that, but that's my opinion. But I think that if you recognize the disability as what it is, then you will get better communication from someone. If you need direct face-to-face contact, if you need information in writing, if you need interpreters, all that, it would be easier if we would just face it instead of trying to hide it or deny it as though, like you said, you'll grow out of it or it'll go away. That's not true.
And you know, one of the biggest things, it's okay to be deaf. It's okay to be hard of hearing. It's okay, it's just a way of communication. For example, and I have been given permission by the young lady to always be able to share, and she said her testimony. There's nothing wrong with the mind. It's only the way the information is being gotten. So there has been several deaf adults that I have worked with, and now they have graduated college. They are BSWs in the work field. But we had to give them a language first, and it's okay to sign. And then, you know, Michigan was an oral state until 1984. I don't know if you know that. but it was an oral state, and even in our deaf school, it was against the law to sign and to teach sign language. So a lot of people think because a person was deaf or hard of hearing that they have had an opportunity to learn sign language, and this was a second language because they still want to make English their first language. But it wasn't so. And so if you didn't have a certain amount of deafness, you were not allowed even to go to the deaf school, which didn't mean that you would learn sign language because you were in a deaf school. But
I'm familiar with that because the years that I was in school, I went to regular school, regular classrooms and everything, and as I got older, they were trying to place me in particular classes and I had no familiarity with it. I'm like, well, now what do? You wait till I practically graduate from high school, whatever, and then you said, Marsha, we need you over here in this particular type of setting. I couldn't even relate.
That's
you know,
right.
It was too far apart in services for me to try to understand what they were trying to get me to relearn at a later date.
That's right.
You know, but I think in this last 10 years or so, or 20 maybe, we've gotten better.
Well, yes, in the last 15 years, because actually when Governor Blanchard was in office, that's when they signed to make sign language a legal language, so it could be taught in the schools. So it could be taught in the deaf school as well as in the regular public education. It is actually a language, so that came a long ways. And what I like is the services that have came about too. The various services that they have came into action. For example, with me working with Betty, she works with kids or adults, preparing them for the work world. And how they do that? She have workshops, seminars, and in those workshops and seminars, they teach them how to write a resume. It be taught how to go in and dress for an interview, how to ask questions in an interview. Also, she's teaching them, you must do homework about the agency you want to go and get involved with. You need to learn about that agency to make sure it will be fitting you. So that's a combination that we can work together, and it's so important.
Now, Betty, let me ask you, so when you teach those type of classes, how do you impress upon the profoundly deaf person to approach the job? I mean, because some of the job markets are not open to the fact that, oh, this person is deaf and they are here for an interview. What do I do?
Well, you know, first of all, I try to research to see which companies are willing to hire handicapped, hard of hearing or deaf. And then once we do that, we know exactly what companies that we would be able to send them to. We do have mock interviews with real employers that come in and sit with them and take them through the steps that they need to go through. We teach them how to dress, what to wear when they go to an interview. We teach them that you need to try to always have eye contact. You do it the same way that you would do a hearing child. The difference is that most of the time they will have an interpreter with them to help them.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy, and they work at it because it's something that they want to do.
Right. So the makeup of it is primarily the same as if it was a high school student graduating and he or she is planning for a career
Exactly.
in the workforce. Okay. Well, ladies, let's take a commercial break and we'll be right back with some more good information. Be right back.
Save a place for me. Save a space for me. In your heart, in your heart.
Every year, the United Negro College Fund helps thousands of students go to college. But for everyone we help, there's one we can't. Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Hi, and welcome back to the second half of the show. For those of you who are just now joining us, we have the Michigan Society for Deaf Children of Wayne County, and we're currently talking with Beverly Parnell and Betty Pyatt. Now, ladies, we left off with some very good information here, and I wanted to ask one particular question about the hospitals. I find that, you know, I always wanted to know, rather, when a client is profoundly deaf and they have an emergency and they go to the hospital, when and how is an interpreter called in to assist the physicians with the information to the client?
Unfortunately, I have to say that still is a very rough area that we're trying to develop in, because there has been clients, even as recently as last year, that I have called ahead to inform the hospital that we have a deaf person coming in an ambulance, that an interpreter needs to be called and be there for them when they come. And I always follow up, because I know most times an interpreter is yet not called until after I arrive. And many times after I arrive, they have said, oh no, I've been working this job for 17 years. They can read my lips. And I'm saying, no, they can't. They don't know your lips. They don't know you enough to do this. So many hospitals are still, quote unquote, in the dark ages of really how to service our hearing impaired population. There are some hospitals, though I do have to give them credit. When you walk in, you call them, they call the interpreters, and they'll have the interpreter there. So it's really based upon which hospital that you go to. Unfortunately, once they're hospitalized, it seems like the services are then forgotten. The deaf person is taken to the room, the nurse come in, I want to take your temperature, and what the deaf person is really saying is just do what you have to do, I'm under your mercy, but do they really understand?
Right.
Most times not. But many of our deaf people and hard of hearing people are being educated that they can request these services now. And you know, if you're in a hospital, you don't want to antagonize anyone, because you're at their mercy at that time. But we let them know it's okay to fight for the appropriate services.
But that's
and that's
frightening.
my job.
That's frightening, though. I mean, you know, if you are profoundly deaf and you're in the hospital and all of a sudden you have to have major surgery and the interpreter's not there, you know, and the doctor's trying to convey the information right away. I wonder if the system has gotten to the point yet where they should have trained staff already on hand in the medical field. Why isn't there nursing programs or doctoral programs that have interpretations involved in the course outline, which would be supportive of this type of service, so that if you're a good doctor, you know you're a good doctor, you say, hey, I'm a specialist, I can do this. Not only do I specialize in this particular healthcare issue, but I can also relate to my clients if necessary by sign language. That would be a plus. I don't see where there should be a problem with that. I think that that's another accreditation to a person's records if they're, you know, a sign language interpreter.
And you know, that would be great, and that is something we really would like. Or even have a staff that they have hired that are working on various shifts to make sure that they have a staff person on hand to be able to provide those services. But again, it becomes to money.
Right.
You know, everything is money. Does it fit the budget? Do we have enough hearing impaired persons coming into the hospital? And the answer is yes. But the problem is it's not noted, because we have over 36,000 deaf people just in Wayne County alone. So, you know, we have a lot of people right here.
Right. What is the issue surrounding Social Security? How is it when you deal with Social Security benefits?
Well, with Social Security, again, getting an interpreter, you inform them that an interpreter is needed when the person comes to the agency. And each time I have went, they didn't have an interpreter. They had a person that can sign a little bit. And their signing is knowing alphabets. Well, we do not sit there and finger spell to the clients all day long, nor write, well, they can understand, I'll write to them. No, that is not the appropriate mode of communication. And so, to let you know, there was a person that was cut off of Social Security because the person misunderstood what the deaf person was telling them. For example, they asked him where did he live, and he told them where he lived and gave the address. And they asked, is it a single home? Is it a flat? Is it a ranch? And he said, oh, it's a flat. However, when they had the person to go out and check the home, it was a ranch-style home. They cut the young man off. He contacted our agency, and I went over to advocate with him as usual. And we questioned, well, why did you cut him off? He's not understanding. And the person says, oh, Well, he said he lived in a flat, and that's a single home, and it's a ranch-style home, so he must not live there, and he was only using that address. And I asked him again. I said, well, when you asked him this question, how did you relate it to him? He said, well, I asked him where he lived, and what did he say? He said a flat. I said, what did he do? And he said, oh, he said a flat, and he did like this. I said, yeah, flat. Ranch-style home, everything on one floor.
Right.
It
Because
didn't mean flat upper and lower level.
some of the words or some of the symbols, do some of the symbols mean two words or can relate to two words?
Yes, it can.
Right, and I think that the public or persons of non-hearing can get to that point where two words mean the same thing and someone misinterprets that word as being meant for one.
Right.
That
He
sign
meant a
for one.
flat, a ranch-style home. The person took the flat as a two-family flat.
Right.
Different meanings.
Most definitely. That's that's kind of hard to relate to, but you know, it kind of bothers me that because sign language is not considered as an important language as English, that we're going under and not coming up. You know, in other words, we're doing half of the job that we should be doing for society's deaf and hard of hearing, and that makes it difficult because it's more and more people every generation, every year that comes up and goes to these special programs, go to these schools. Now, I'm an advocate for the fact that if you send me to school, college, high school, whatever, if I'm trainable for school, then I'm trainable to be employed. And there's no way you can allow me to go to school and assist me through school, then drop me like a hot potato after school, and then I have to scuffle and try to find a meaningful job with no assistance or no recognition that, well, she did finish school. What do we do from here? So Betty, let me ask you a question. When you're teaching a class in job readiness, do you have a situation where one of your students is not comfortable with a certain type of job?
A lot of times the student or the deaf are pushed into jobs that they, for instance, we had one young man that was sent to Kalamazoo to learn how to mop floors, because they felt that that was all he was able to do. Today, he actually works helping other handicapped people. So sometimes it is, and they accept, sometimes they don't want to fight for it. They
Right.
just accept it because the doctors and the people at school told them this is the only thing that you can do. A lot of them, when they go to the universities, there are universities that do not have interpreters there. So they do go into the classes, but they end up dropping out because they don't have the interpreters there to help them get through, and the grades are low.
Right.
Again, sometimes when they're out of high school, they come at a lower level, which means that they have to fight to catch up to your hearing children or hearing students that go into college. So sometimes it's hard.
Let me ask you, what age group do you actually work with?
Actually, I work with, I have a 2-year-old that's learning to sign.
Okay.
So I work with whoever needs help. We try to go at least though from, school age up.
Okay.
And there's really, as long as they need help, if they're hearing impaired or if they're deaf, we're there to give them that help.
That's wonderful. Okay. Betty, same thing. I'm sorry. Beverly, same thing. What age group do you work with?
We work with all age group population, from infants all the way through adulthood.
Okay. Okay. So it's a combination of teaching the parents as well as teaching the students or the children?
Correct.
Okay.
That's why we say children and families, so we can go across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
wonderful.
You do sometimes have to educate the parent because as well as telling the student that they can't, this is all you can do, they tell the parent, well, they'll never be able to do this. Don't try to let them do it. Don't push them into
Right.
that. Just let them go ahead and do this.
Right.
And of course, the parent is listening to professionals
That white
and
coat.
saying they know what they're doing, they know what they're telling me, so they do it.
Right. I think that's stifling if you
Yes, it is.
allow, the physicians or the paraprofessionals, whatever, to tell you that your child can't do this or do that, because that's not the way I was brought up. So I just challenged the world and did everything. But still, I remember working in college in the post office and how in one area of the post office, the profoundly deaf and hearing impaired employees worked in one area.
Yes.
And I was not in that area, and I protest not to go to that area. And they had a light that used to flash to let them know when the breaks and the lunch and everything was. And one day I went over there to take attendance or something, and I had to sign. And this lady was so happy to see me, and I could only sign so much, and I signed to her, and then I had to write the rest of the information. But she was so glad to be able to converse with me. But I was hurt because they were in just this one area, and that area was designated for hearing impaired and profoundly deaf, and I never forgot that. And I think that's what made me just, whatever I wanted to do, you know, just go for it and see what happens. And I think everybody should do that.
Again, what you're saying, they were isolated even in the workplace.
Right.
Yes.
You know, you get janitorial jobs, dishwasher jobs, laundry room attendant jobs, and it's not the mind nor the body that's impaired, you know, it's the hearing. And so
Right.
the rest of me is being held back because you, the person who's not sure of me, is not giving me the opportunity.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay?
And that's why we have the workshops for family development, social development, so that they can, and they are comfortable going out there.
Okay, well, ladies, before we close, we'd like to get some phone numbers for you because I'm sure some of our listening and viewing audience would like to be able to contact you. And you're both nonprofit organizations?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you have a phone number for us there?
Yes, is area code 313-255-3918.
Okay.
And we also, and they can call anytime.
Okay, now, you have TTY and a voice or just?
Yes,
Okay, it's the same number for TTY?
same number.
Okay. And you want to give that to us again? I'm sorry.
And that's area code 313-255-3918.
Okay, and Betty, you have one too?
Yes, the number that they can reach Deaf and Hard of Hearing Network at is 372-6955.
Okay. Okay, well, ladies, I want to thank you both for coming out to see us, and we look forward to seeing you again and hearing from you. Please drop by anytime. Keep us posted on any changes or upcoming events, and we'll be glad to come out. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, you all know who I am. I'm Marsha Florence, your host for Just Ask. Before we close, we want to give a special thanks to our interpreter, Jackie Sargent Hale, and we'd like to thank our guests as well. So, as I always say, if you know someone with a disability, don't be afraid to ask. Just ask. I'm your host, Marsha Florence. Thank you.